Don't make me come down there. Okay, we're ready? I just want to make a comment for the readers. There is a cord here at the top of the stairs you might be careful of. There's only one cord, but you don't want to trip over it. So we're starting.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Burt Tome number 8. Yes. Number 8. Woo. I have been asked to make sure that this first reader does not go on too long. She says she wants to make sure she doesn't go past 5 minutes. So if you do, I'm going to make this sound. Jan Burroughs began her career as a painter, which led to an award-winning animation and documentary film career. Her film Pioneer Woman aired on A&E. She has been a film teacher at OSU, a film critic, journalist, cartoonist, screenwriter, playwright, and librettist for the opera Matahari, which premiered in Indonesia. Her first novel, Jose Builds a Woman, won first place for fiction in the Kay Snow Awards. Ursula Le Guin called it a romp through the extravagantly carnal Mexico of the imagination. Jan has published 2 illustrated travel guides, and her impending second novel is called The Bakersfield Diaries. For almost 2 years, she's been publishing on her blog an original sketch every day. Jan Burroughs. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jan Burroughs. Okay, here goes. This is called The Promised Land, and it's the first chapter in my new novel, The Bakersfield Diaries. Okay. The Promised Land, Bakersfield, California, 1948. My father's black hair is wild in the wind. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. He's driving our old Chevy, making a gradual descent into the stifling San Joaquin Valley. We're headed for Redneck Central, Bakersfield, California, a small outpost of primitive politics, hot, flat, aggressive agriculture, and oil when oil is plentiful. Uprooted from the cool breezes of San Francisco Bay, our overheated car steams protest through the burlap-colored Tehachapi's. Ahead of us is a dry landscape of biblical proportions. The wide valley is split by a black-spined highway, or the mirage of a highway that wavers in the breathless heat. It's a place the wisest pass through, but we're staying. Father found a job, in spite of his being Jewish. It's a laugh line. Now it's a laugh line, it wasn't then. Sweat runs down his face, he clings tight into the wheel. The threat of death by Cossacks propelled him out of a Russian ghetto. His immigrant answer is he becomes a gladly overworked knight of commerce. He still believes a paycheck will insulate his family. Mother understands better than any of us what lays ahead. A woman of big city possibilities, she endured a childhood indentured to small town sensibilities, and now father is returning her to the same insular life. When her good-natured papa was killed, stepping off a Memphis Bella streetcar, his senseless death formed and deformed within her a volcanic impatience not to waste time. Look out the window, children, she says as we speed along Highway 99. There are vast dusty fields and palms on either side. We're drowsy with the heat, but we take our vigil at the window. Remember those trees, she said, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again. Her road trip mantra, you may never see them again always sets a terror ticking in me. How am I to gather all those images ghosting past? And is life really so brief that I will never pass this way again? I look to the dry, distant mountains surrounding the San Joaquin Valley. They don't move. They wouldn't crumble when my 7-year-old eyes leaves them behind. The car speeds past the outskirts of Bakersfield, past motels spread like tiny refugee camps. An occasional dust-covered eucalyptus droops in loose welcome. Wind blows the desert in through open windows, the grit of my childhood, mixed with the smell of the highway. In those days, there were no seat belts. I rolled into a tired assault on damned little brother. I take pleasure in his quiet gasp as I pinch a pudgy thigh. The blonde prince, the little genius, bites his lip to keep silent, not wanting to get me in trouble. I resent his loyalty almost as much as I resent his birth. Mother glances back at our silence, her eyes unfocused. Her thoughts will never find purchase on the monochrome horizon. It's too far from her dream of circumambulating out on these moments of Paris. She dreams in some symphonic uplifts. A glass apartment against a Paris sky, ascending plumes of lathered espresso, steaming crepes served in outdoor cafes where, even in the recent rubble of war, every cobblestone is an upended shrine. We'll stay for just a year, Father promised. Just 1 year, until he could put together a passable nest egg for our exodus back to the bay. The orbit of one unbearable year that turned into 25 by the time Mother buried Father and left on Air France. Welcome to Bakersfield. Our Chevy speeds past the sign, population 40,462. Mother pulls on a large straw hat that hides her Irish skin. She'll wear that hat whenever she wants to remind Father of his exodus promise. Over the next quarter century, we will hear her say with growing alarm and less humor, "Daddy, whenever you're ready." Her only fond memory of Bakersfield, she wrote later on Hotel Eiffel stationery, was the seductively warm night when she stood in the backyard garden without a shawl and felt embraced by a Manet heat. She still smoked then and held a cigarette fresh style in her fingers. As dusk fell, she would snub out her last cigarette in the barbecue ash. She'd return to us from the dark, smelling of smoke and the cryogenic chill of our air-conditioned home. "Oh God," says Mother, "are we really here?" Bakersfield is written in huge, weathered blue letters above our heads on the yellow sky bridge spanning the highway. Mother's own personal diaspora has begun. She is now an official exile in the vast Mojave. I shield my eyes from the excruciating glare of plate glass windows. The Nile, a Baroque movie house, contrasts with the board game sameness of the other buildings. The Main Street, Chester Avenue, seems wide enough to sail a royal barge over the wavy heap of asphalt. We're lost as Father winds us through one dried-out neighborhood after another. Tumbleweeds cling to sagging cyclone fences along the dusty roads, and dogs with long tongues lay collapsed in the sparse shade. When we stop on the corner of one potholed street, Mother checks the address and moans. Father sighs an apology. The Chevy's overheated engine gets us up the sloping driveway. The small brick house is painted white with a black wooden door. The roof is covered in red Spanish tiles. "Oh, good. Now we're Mexicans," says Mother. The first home they ever owned.
Krista Debakis Price sat in Tom's basement for about 3 years, but has never really left the place. She is currently working on a nonfiction book called Teaching a Love Story. This is her 3rd time reading at Burnt Tongue. Krista Debakis Price.
So I have to admit, for a long time, I've had novel envy. A lot of my friends and a lot of people in this room have written novels or worked on novels, and I'm just not sure there's a novel in me, and I always was pretty envious of that. And then, a couple of summers ago, I took a flash fiction class with David Ciminello. And what David did is, David, for our final, our assignment was to write a flash fiction novel. And it was very specific. We had to do all this crazy stuff. It had to be 7 chapters long. Each chapter couldn't be more than 420 characters. The first chapter was present tense, the second first person, third chapter was all dialogue, all setting. It was crazy like that. And for a lot of people I know that would not fly. For me, those kind of parameters and that kind of freedom was nirvana. I loved it. And David gave us a prompt, something to do with a carnival, and it didn't fly for me. But it did put me in the mind of Springsteen's Sandy, Asbury Park, 4th of July. So that inspired me to write my first novel in 7 chapters. Chapter 1. I just hope I get to see Bruce Springsteen is all. I heard he makes surprise appearances all the time. Some unknown band will be playing the Stone Pony, and boom, out comes Springsteen. I heard he brings his kids to Asbury Park all the time, or they're big now, but when they were little he did. Put them on the Tilt-A-Whirl, see Madame Marie's, the whole bit. He doesn't ever forget his roots. Man, I hope I get to see him. Chapter 2. I went to see Madame Marie myself one time. It was a trip. She was getting pretty old these days. Her hands shake, which makes her million gypsy bracelets shake. Even her voice is kind of old lady shaky, which makes it kind of hard to hear her. But she told me good things are in store for me. I'm going to get lucky in love, she said. Chapter 3. We were all huddled around the Ouija board, and Billy was being a jerk. He kept taking his greasy, dirty nail fingernails and totally pushing the Ouija pointer wherever he wanted it to go. The bad thing, the scary thing, is he kept that pointy thing, that predictor of the future thing, aimed right at me. Fag. Chapter 4. I see a rough life ahead. I'm sorry, Madame Marie, could you speak up a little? Your life will be fraught with turmoil. Good things ahead, you say? Beware the woman with fiery eyes. Will I find true love, Madame Marie? The woman will do you harm. Protect your heart. Just a hint, Madame Marie, what will she be like? Is she hot? You will live to regret her. You know, like hot in the body department, she will rob your soul. Chapter 5. The boardwalk seems to stretch forever along the Atlantic Ocean. Each step on the aging planks creaked with possibility. Always crowded, but those in the know. They hop over the railing and slip unseen under the boardwalk. The sun through the slats makes stripes on the sand. If it's low tide, it's very romantic. Chapter 6. Ever know a guy completely unlucky in love? A guy who, no matter what, gets his clock cleaned every time? Not a bad-looking guy, but it's like he has an attraction magnet that draws the chicks close, then the polarity switch, and the chicks are completely repelled. They never leave without collateral damage. Always a cleaned out bank account, a pile of bills, a heart stomped on and spit out. Chapter 7. The couple is holding hands walking down the beach. Seeing them is no big deal anymore. Nobody stares. They walk past the Tilt-A-Whirl and up onto the boardwalk. One guy has his pants rolled up past his ankles. The other guy is wearing shorts, a little too tight. On the way home, they pass Madame Marie's. I went to see her once, says the guy with the rolled up pants. She predicted this. Lucky in love is what she told me.
Dodge's work has appeared in Hobart, Metagen, Gargoyle, Plasm, Golden Handcuff Review, Gobshite Quarterly, Nail Magazine, and Portland Review, among many others. He collaborated with Lance Olson on the writing anti-textbook, Architectures of Possibilities, After Innovative Writing, and hosts the creative arts podcast, Possible Architect. He edits the Clackamas Literary Review in Oregon City. His latest collection of stories, The Laws of Average, is out this month at Chiasmus Press. There you go.
It's so good to meet you. Nice to meet you. Wow. Hi, everybody. Hi. It's really great to see so many of you again. And so tip one out for Tom and Sage tonight, right? Yeah. But drink it before you tip it out. They want you to do that for sure. I'm going to read the piece that is in the anthology that's for sale. Davis is back there with the Forest Avenue Press anthology, The Night in the Rain and the River, with some amazing design work done by Gigi back here. And the piece that I have in the anthology, I worked in the Pearl District for about 10, 11 years. And thankfully I didn't have to go every day, but I did go once a week and then spent some time in Jameson Square in that lovely, lovely park over there. And what started happening for one chunk of the season that I was working was there was an MTV film crew rolling around the Pearl District because they were shooting The Real World in Portland. And of course, everybody's going to pretend like they don't know what I'm talking about. I know. So The Real World is this reality television series. Because I'm as old as I am, because I grew up in Southern Idaho as an only child with only cable television. So I'm the only person in the room who knows what the hell I'm talking about. Oh, so you do know. Oh, so anyway, I got to thinking about the process by which someone would actually want to be on this television show, and what about the people, you know that you get to know the people who got selected to be on the show, because it's an application process, but what about the people who don't get to be on the show? So this is in the voice of somebody who doesn't. So this is called Real World Reject. Yeah, it's right there. I was the one they didn't pick to live in the loft. The one not picked to live with 7 strangers. They didn't want to know what happens when I stop being polite, when I start getting real. This is the true story. I'm not alone in this, but I was the one they never even considered. The one married and middle-aged. The one they were afraid would bring a mortgage into the loft, maybe. Afraid would move a husband and children in too, maybe. They weren't interested to find out what happens when nothing at all happens. When people never stop being polite. When there are bedtimes and routines, and the mailman brings mail that has to be opened. That's what I would do every day, open the mail. Open and sort the mail for everyone in the loft I wasn't picked to live in with. I wouldn't snoop, I would help. Would help the others who were picked to keep on top of things. Help them organize and prioritize their obligations. Is that why they didn't pick me? Or is what happened is I was picked at first, and they showed me to the other strangers who'd already been picked, and they all decided not to let me be picked for real, for keeps. All of them felt this way, except for the mousy bi-curious one, or the churchy one, or the cowboy hat one, or the lip-pierced one, or the community college one. Is that what happened? Or is what happened more complicated? Is what happened that everyone picked me to be picked, and they all agreed, but then the pickers, they asked my friends, my family, my priest, my boss, my exes, my parents, and they all told such compelling stories about how the adverse effects for them, they wouldn't be worth it. That ultimately the drama would be too much about what happens outside the frame and not what happens inside it. That the parts they couldn't film or hint at, these parts weren't or wouldn't be parts at all. Or is what happened that they friended me on Facebook as someone I thought was really that someone, but really they weren't that someone at all. And they followed me, and they read my status updates, and they looked at my photos, and then didn't read my status updates, and then didn't look at my photos anymore. What if that was it? That I didn't post the right status or photo at the right time? Or that I posted the right status or photo at the wrong time? That I didn't post anything right at all? Or that I did? Was it something someone else posted about me? Or didn't? Was it a private message sent by someone who I have no contact with anymore? Someone who said I would fuck anyone in the loft? Or that I would fuck everyone in the loft? Did any of them want to fuck me? Were they asked this before they got to pick whether or not I'd be picked? Was it a tight contest between me and that other person who didn't get picked to be picked either? The one who, given the right light and drink and room, I could fall desperately in love with for 3 minutes? The one who could make me more real, less polite? The one who I'll never meet in any other way? The one who won't ever meet me now? Maybe no one wanted to fight me. Maybe that's what really happened. It was at the heart of everything. They aren't afraid of me because they know they shouldn't be. They just don't think I'm worth the fight no matter what it's about. Not if it's about taking out the garbage or unclogging the toilet or doing the dishes or asking ill-timed questions or making up rumors or breaking girl code or not breaking girl code or setting the alarm or camping on the computer or moving around the furniture or squeegeeing the shower or piling the laundry or scooping the dog shit or being a tease or being too forward, not being forward enough, not liking her instead of him, not liking him instead of other him, not liking any him at all. But I do and I don't. That's why I open the mail, you see. I open the mail because I have to know more about myself. There's more in the mail than just what other people want. And that is why I wrote you today. A real letter on real paper, crisp folds, perfumed envelope, stamped, licked with ink and everything. And I hope you feel like I meant it when I wrote all this by hand and smudged the paper with the knuckle of my pinky. Staining my knuckles so bad my husband and kids and boss all thought I punched someone and bruised it. Which of course is always what happens when you're writing faster than you can think. But that's just me making excuses again, because that's what always happens, you know? That's what I do. Thanks.
Kathleen Lane. Kathleen Lane. Kathleen. Yeah. They're plotting for you, Kathleen. Kathleen mostly writes short stories, but recently turned one of her short stories into a middle grade novel, which was just acquired by Little Brown for publication in the spring of 2016. One of the best decisions she ever made in her life was walking to Tom's basement about 11 years ago. Kathleen Lane.
Hi, Liz. Good to see you here. All right. First of all, somehow I missed the news that I was supposed to read from the book. So sorry, Dami. I don't know how that got past me. I was going to read something that I wrote about, I don't know, 5 or so years ago, 8 or so years ago in Tom's workshop. So these are the first couple of chapters of a novel. And don't let that scare you, they're only 4 pages. Okay. Let's see. 1 half-knit burgundy scarf, 3 unfinished poems, the only pair of underwear ever bought for her by a man. Birth control pills, expiration August 2003. A never worn sweater, too orange, people might look. The best of Billy Joel, the best of John Denver, the best of Elton John. A hook rug,
Labradors in Love, made when she was 12, along with its flesh-colored sixth-place ribbon from the Tumwater County Fair. Souvenirs from other people's vacations. Miniature sombrero, cable car brooch, bobblehead pope, tulip bulb and clock. 2 unopened packets of seed, rhubarb, foxglove, 1 unused college diploma, and the line she rehearsed on her way to the bridge, "Goodbye, Lydia Hicks." Chapter 2. The air smells like the wood rot of river logs and the mud-slipped rocks of salamander catching, and it gives Anthonyette a happy feeling in his stomach. The calendar isn't something Anthonyette pays much attention to, but somewhere down in him, he knows what day is what. That today is a day that's warm cold, like when the apples get fat and the kids go off to the school with the big green doors. It's a day that won't ever get cold cold, like when your snot freezes up, or hot hot, like the day his mama died. His boots are streaked green and stiff with yesterday's river, and their untied laces make tiny slapping sounds as he stomps out across the porch. He passes by the cedar planter where his mama Lima used to grow her bleeding hearts. Then under the birdhouse she hung from the porch rafters, just right of center, so anyone taller than 5'8", anyone who took up more than his share of the sky, would have to aim himself precisely or get knocked with a sparrow-sized tutor on his way to the door. The birdhouse in its perpetual state of alpine cheer is about the only bright left on the Hafner property, now that everything else is faded to some grayer shade of itself. Lima got her cancer, and it was as if the house began its own slow retreat from the world, had its own version of dying. Steps giving in on one side or the other, cracks running the lengths of walls, from where the joists just got tired, stopped holding their own, the way in old people this bone gets to relying on that one. At the top of the porch steps, it used to be robin's egg blue before they cracked up into elephant hide. Anthonyette drops himself down and sets to work on his bootlaces. Ears clamped deft between knees, tongue like a third lip tucked between the other two. He bends lace into bunny ear, lace into bunny ear. The laces get tied into littler and littler bows, bows on top of bows, until there's no more lace, no more loop, just a knotted mound sticking vertical off each boot. A bird calls down from his papa's shed. Chee, chee, chee. Chee, chee, Anthonyette calls, his head bent back to reveal a patch of whiskers missed by his papa's razor. The bird flies off into the field with Anthonyette following after, tassels of wheat painting thin lines of last night's rain onto his jacket. He catches a stalk, runs fingers off end to gather its seeds, tosses the seeds out into the field to grow new baby weeds, before disappearing into the trees that will take him to the river. At Anthonyette's river, there's a half circle of river rocks with a tall tree on one side that's good for leaning on, and on the other side a knocked down out of that baby tree. She has boobs on her. She has 1, 2, 4 boobs. The lady tree sticks out into the river, and if you want to, you can sit cross-legged on her and be an Indian paddling in your canoe. But you cannot sit on her boobs. You cannot, because boobs is privacy, and you do not touch privacy unless it's your own privacy that other people cannot touch. Anthonyette finds a stick long as his arm, but not big like it, skinny like pepperoni sticks, and bites it like a dog fetching a stick, but he's not a dog, he's an Indian. You have to bite the stick so you can crawl out onto the lady tree. You have to hold on tight when you crawl so you don't fall into the water. That water is cold. It's cold, 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 and wet. When Anthonyette gets out to the end, he sits down careful not to fall into the cold water. Now it's not a lady tree anymore, it's an Indian canoe. One at a time, he drags his boot heels up the canoe until he's an Indian chief, takes the stick out of his mouth and gives the water a poke. The river is a gray as a wool bed blanket and makes the water sleepy. Anthonyette watches the tired water for a fish to jab. He's gonna jab the fish to take it home to show his papa. Over there's the people kissing bridge. Sometimes it's a Fisher bridge, but today it's not a kissing or a Fisher bridge. Today there's a lady on it and she's got a box hugged up in her arms. Anthonyette starts to stand up, but standing up is bad. Standing up makes his canoe go wobbly, so he sits back down and waves to the lady, but she does not wave back. He waves bigger and waits for the lady to wave, but she does not wave, and so he goes back to looking for his fish. He's an Indian in his canoe. Fish. He did not see the fish, but he heard it. He heard it splash. Leaning over his boots, he watches the water for the fish, but there's no fish. He looks up at the lady on the kissing bridge to see if she got the fish, but the lady is gone. The water is swirls like syrup poured from a jug, little and bigger up to Anthony Ed's canoe. He holds his stick up high and searches the water for his fish. He's gonna jab that fish. He's gonna jab that fish and take it home to show his papa.
Margaret Malone. That's all I need, right? Margaret Malone's work has appeared in the Missouri Review, Oregon Humanities, Swink, Coal City Review, LATimes.com, and elsewhere. She is the recipient of an Oregon Literary Fellowship and an Oregon Arts Commission Individual Arts Fellowship. Artist Fellowship. I can't even say it, much less get one. A co-host of the artist and literary gathering Share. She lives in Portland with her husband and 2 children.
Hi.
Hi.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Donnie. And thank you to everyone who has participated and bought one of the anthologies. It's been kind of a treat to be part of it. It's been pretty awesome. So I'm going to do something crazy. This is crazy for me. Crazy. I'm not going to read from the beginning of the story. I'm going to read the end, which is that's all I'm going to say. Very challenging for me to do this. Okay, so I think all you need to know, I'll think of more you need to know, because I don't ever read from the middle, but I'm not going to tell you. All I'll tell you is that this woman and her boss have stolen a goose from the Office Park Pond, where they work, because the boss is trying to save the goose. That's all I can know. Yeah. Okay. They just stole, they just had gotten the goose in the car, and this is where I'm gonna start. Okay. Every time I'm in Barb's BMW, I'm amazed by the interior. Black leather seats and a fancy navigation system with maps and buttons and lights that look like the cockpit of a plane. If I had a fancy car, I'd never put a goose in it, but Barb is funny like that. Borrowing her car to drive 10 blocks to pick up sandwiches for a client meeting is out of the question, but she'll let a pooped up goose ride shotgun. The car took a U-turn and drove out of the lot. Goose let out a loud honk. I know, Barb said. He tried to fly at the windshield. I'm sorry, she said, my poor baby. Out my side window, the Office Park Pond looked normal. The water feature in the center, spitting water up into the air. The trees hanging over the sides of the pond. The stone bench was empty. Everything like it was supposed to be, just one goose short. The car was going slow through the streets of Foster City. We passed the big mall and a diner I like because they make good waffles. The radio was on, chatter about the stock market, the tick-tick of Barb's blinker as she moved over a lane. Goose aimed his long neck at the roof of the car, let loose a low moo that climbed to a proper honk. Hold tight, Barb said, we're almost there. The BMW turned off Hillsdale Boulevard onto a small side street and entered one of the subdivisions built on top of the marsh. All of Foster City is built on marsh land. Originally, the marsh stretched between San Mateo and the bay, an intermediary between land and water. Then developers came through in the 60s and put cement over the marshland and built a bunch of look-alike houses, and people moved in. Finally, they slapped a bike path onto the perimeter of everything. It traces the edge of a man-made land so that people can jog and pedal and push strollers while looking out across all that water. Barb picked a street and headed east-southeast according to her cockpit controls. We drove through the neighborhood. There were not a lot of trees. A woman my age in sweatpants stood next to an open minivan door yelling at someone inside. Farther down, an off-road pink tricycle rested on its side in the broad cement driveway. A big white boat asleep under a blue tarp. The street stood us out against the embankment below the bike path, not too far from the foot of the long white San Mateo Bridge. Barb parked her car against the sidewalk next to an incline of green vegetation. I could make out the bridge's rush of moving traffic, the sound in competition with the water on the other side of the incline, lapping against the rocks. The three of us sat in the quiet car. I watched the seagull through the car window. It caught a rise of wind over the day. I don't see any other geese, I said. That's ridiculous. Of course there are geese here. Geese love water. Why do you think they're always around that pond? Barb said. It's because of the water. When Barb got out of the car, I did too. She walked around to the passenger door and opened it wide. Goose erupted from the car in an awkward takeoff, one wing catching on the car's frame. He hobbled to the embankment's incline of vegetation that separates the streets from the bike path, ruffled himself, shook his tail feathers, spread his wings as far as they opened, and honked out one big cry. Goose walked up the incline and we followed him. Barb in her black suit and black high heels, me in my slacks and flats, my sweat staining the underarms of my work blouse. The water lapped against the rocks, the traffic off a ways on the bridge. A bicyclist sped by me. A lady in red shorts was jogging farther down the path. I don't see any other geese, I said again. Goose pecked his bill at the ground. Will you be okay here? Barb said. Do you think you can make some new friends? Goose spread his wings and flapped them around and laid them back against his chest. Well, all right then, Barb said. Goodbye to you too. On the return car ride, it was very quiet. I sat in the back again, radio on low, some kind of news. The car was like a crime scene. Goose's bunched up towel on the passenger seat, grassy, wild poop smell. When Barb pulled into the office lot and parked, neither of us got out. Big white clouds floated low in the blue sky. I could see them reflected in the mirrored windows of the office building. That's right, wasn't it, she said, what we did? A light wind tugged at the branches of the trees surrounding the pond. I guess, I said, I don't know. Oh Jesus, Mindy, have a fucking opinion sometimes. Barb blew her nose, sniffed. I couldn't tell if she was crying or if her allergies were acting up. I got out of the car and walked past the pond, the bench, the trees. The rest of the geese were on the other side of the grass now, pecking. Two were swimming together in the pond. For the rest of the day, we didn't say much. Even the phone barely rang. I typed client letters on the computer and ate from a bag of peanut M&Ms I found at the back of my desk drawer. At the end of the day, I called goodnight to Barb without poking my head in the door, and I did not look over when I walked past the pond. Deep into my nighttime ritual, I'm reading in bed, hand in an open bag of Milano cookies, my cat Roger asleep on the side of my feet. The phone rings. I share a landline with my parents downstairs, but I don't answer it because it's never for me. My mom shouts through the floor, "It's Barb," she says. I pull on jeans over my pajamas, grab my purse and my dad's old heavy wool flannel shirt that I wear with a jacket and head downstairs. I can hear a TV talking behind my parents' bedroom door. I put my head close to the shut door and listen just to have a moment to myself. I knock twice. I say, "It's me." My dad says, "Duh." My head pokes through the open door. I cannot see their faces, just two sets of feet poked up under bed covers facing the night news on the television screen. I say, "I need to borrow the car, is that okay?" My dad says, "You'll never get a man to marry you with a boss like that. You might as well marry her instead." My mom says, "My keys are on the entry table." The furnace kicks on, air pushed through the vents. Roger follows me down the stairs, his metal tag clanging with each step. Louis is where he always is, in the living room, feet in their socks, stretched out on Dad's brown corduroy recliner, green fields on the TV, different color outfits running from one side of the screen to the other. I grab Mom's keys from the entry table. "You got a booty call," Louis says. "Very funny," I say. "I have to meet Barb." "Mom and Dad think you're a lesbian, you know." "Shut up, Louis," I said. "That's just Dad." "I'm just saying." It's chilly and the fog is rolling in over the hills. My big flannel should be warm enough, but the damn wind is blowing and my ears are cold. Barb is already up on the bike path calling for Goose. She's wearing her tailored black raincoat and underneath, like me, her pajamas. Her short gray hair is blowing in the wind, standing almost straight up. She is walking the paved path, visible and then not under the tall street lamps, umbrellas of light, visible and then not, visible and then not. She spots me leaning against my folks' car and her voice yells down to me, exasperated as always. I climb up the incline of vegetation and head the opposite direction on the path, north along water. I can hear the sound of water against rock just past the path and a muffled, angry truck horn from far off, and everything in the bay is black except for the lights on the bridge trailing the 7 miles to the other side of the bay where there is finally land again. Lights overhead blink red and white, reflected in the water from the sky as a plane heads for SFO to land and empty out its passengers. I'm alone except for car way behind me, everything dark except for the umbrellas of light. It feels good to be out here and nowhere by myself late at night. Headed away from her, there is no way for me to hear Barb's voice. It doesn't matter, we will never find the goose. I know this, but for Barb's sake I try. Goose, I say. It's more of an insistent whisper. Goose, goose, goose. The long, white, sneaking bones of the bridge stretching over the black water, the blowing wind and quiet sky. Goose, I say. I am louder now. What do I know? Maybe he's out here. Maybe I'm wrong. Goose, I say again. Goose, I use my whole voice. And there, I see something. Is that him? That could be a goose, out a ways in the water, sailing the chop on top of the bay. I stop and listen. The sound of easy nighttime traffic, the bay's rhythmic touching to shore, the tall fingers of dry grass rustling together in the wind. I stop calling his name. Yes, that's enough. It's enough to think maybe.
Kevin Meyer. Is there... Now we have to applaud for everybody. Kevin Meyer is a writer and student teacher in Tom Spandauer's Dangerous Writers Workshop. Writing dangerously for over a decade, his work has been published in The Frozen Moment, Contemporary Writers on the Choices That Change Our Lives, and Nailed magazine. His novel in progress, currently titled Two Shots, explores asthma, domestic violence, and why it's not such a good idea to keep easy access to firearms on the worst day of your life. Direct from his romantic getaway in New York with Tom Spandauer and all the cool kids, Kevin Meyer.
Thanks, everybody. So I always feel, I've been to a lot of Margaret's readings, and I always feel bad for whoever has to read after her, and then I saw it. This is a short story I wrote for Share, which is an event that Margaret and Kathleen put on. So I'm not going to do too much setup. I'll just jump into it because I might have a page extra. We know for a long time that my friend's 30th birthday was coming up. When I say a long time, I mean we knew for like 30 years. It's pretty simple. A person born one day, say 30 years ago, and then all of a sudden, bam, he turns 30. There's no mystery to it. You can kind of see it coming. I guess what I'm trying to say is it wasn't like I sprung the concept on my wife an hour beforehand, all nonchalant, like, hey, so my best friend just turned 30 and I'm going to an all-night raging party and see you later, fuck you, good night. Hell, it wasn't even a surprise to my friend. He knew damn well what he was doing. He was turning 30. The party had been planned for months. This story isn't about my friend or his 30th birthday. I wasn't counting, but for the sake of symmetry, let's say this night was the 30th time I found myself packing a suitcase with just enough clothing to get me through the next few days, to buy myself enough time to figure out my next move. I don't even remember why the fight started. The particulars don't really matter because the fight started the same way it always started. I was about to go do a thing and Charlotte wasn't. Not because she wasn't invited, because she didn't want to. Would have been fine if that was all it was, but Charlotte not wanting to do the thing meant I shouldn't want to do the thing either. The chivalrous thing to do would be to stay home for her Grey's Anatomy binge on Netflix. But it was my friend's 30th birthday. I didn't want to be chivalrous, and I sure as fuck didn't want to watch another episode of Grey's Anatomy. This is the way it always went. There's some event we've got planned weeks or months in advance. One of our favorite bands is a show that night, or a stand-up comic we like in town, or maybe it's just dinner with some friends who grow more and more wary of scheduling anything with us each time we cancel. Fast forward to the morning of the event, and I get a text that says, "I don't feel well. I don't think I can go out tonight." I'm supposed to say, "No, honey, that's not fair. You don't feel well, or what the fuck ever. And you're more important to me, so let's ooze out on the sofa covered in cat hair and lobotomize yourself instead. I love you." I can be a real asshole sometimes. That morning, it was a Friday, I remember, because I was at the office, and I was really looking forward to like 10 cocktails that night, because I could do that. I didn't have anything to do the next day except puke my guts out repeatedly. I mean, I was really looking forward to it. In between meetings, Charlotte's text comes in. "I don't feel well. I don't think I can make it to Will's party tonight." That sinking feeling, deja vu. No fucking way. We just canceled dinner with Dean and Connie the week before, and it was a huge fight to get out of their house to see Fuck Buttons at Star Theater the week before that. I was still paying for that one. Thank God for text messages though, because when I didn't have to look her in the eye, it was all empathy and emojis. My message backwards said, "I'm so sorry, poor Bean." That was her nickname, Bean, like a jelly bean, but girly bean instead. "Poor Bean," I always said, and then 10 rows of kissy lips and kittens and shit. If she could have seen me texting from the office, this is how pissed I was. 3 rows of the unimpressed Easter Island face, followed by 3 rows of the hairy red Japanese demon face, and finally 3 rows of the anthropomorphized pile of poop. You know shit's getting serious when the smiling poop comes out. Because I knew it was coming. We've been through this a million times. I texted back, "I'm sorry you don't feel well, but this is really important to me. Mind if I go solo?" Normally she'd text me right back, and I'd text her right back, and that would go on back and forth forever until I finally had a shitty, boring meeting to attend, and thank God for that. But instead, a long time passes. When I say long, I mean a strategy meeting, a lunch break, and another strategy meeting go by. By the time she finally texts me back, we already know how we're running the company through the end of 2016. This is not a good sign. Sure, she texts back. A few seconds later, another text. Sure, go, I don't mind. Permission, fuck. It's easy to misinterpret things in a text message, but you spend enough time texting back and forth with someone, years and years of it, you learn how to read a message the same way you can hear sarcasm in their voice or catch a little glimpse of the eye roll she tries to hide. It wasn't fine, she minded plenty. Fast forward again. I walk through the front door after the workday's over, and Charlotte's nowhere to be found. House silent. Might as well be empty, but I know it's not. Because Charlotte's car is parked out front, and Charlotte never, and I mean never, walks anywhere. She'd drive a block before she'd walk it. A tumbleweed of cat hair drifts across the living room floor when the AC kicks on, and I swear to God I can hear that music that played right before the 2 old-timey gunmen square off at the corral. Walk through the house slow, 1 foot in front of the other, soft steps, but the floorboards creak anyway. It's an old house. As I get closer to the stairs, I can hear it. Someone's got a bomb implanted in their chest, and the surgeons of Grace Hospital are racing to get it out before it explodes, or whatever crazy shit was on in that show. During a quiet moment, Charlotte hears me creaking my way up the stairs and comes out of the living room to greet me. Greet me's putting it generously. She's half dressed, still wearing her pajamas at 6 o'clock, hair all messed up, but she put makeup on. Cried it all off already, but at least she put in that little bit of effort. More drama in her voice than an episode of Grey's Anatomy. "I can't believe you're going to leave me here alone all night while you're out with other women, drinking and dancing," she said. I wish I was who she thinks I am, that I was that badass, some kind of Don motherfucking Juan. The kind of guy who can pick up any woman he meets in a bar with a single glance. We've been married for nearly a decade. I wouldn't remember how to pick up a woman if she threw herself at me. Looming, that's what she's doing, looming over me. I never should have come home in the first place, but I always came home, always. If only she could have seen that, maybe things would have turned out differently. Drinking and dancing, I said. Have you ever in your life seen me dance? But it never mattered. Sooner or later, it always came down to 3 words. The 3 words that always make me flip my shit. What she says next is the thing she always says next. "Don't abandon me," she said. 2 hours. We're talking about going out with my friend to celebrate his 30th birthday for 2 hours. Okay, maybe 3 or 4 hours. And then a short taxi ride home. And then I spend the rest of the night blackout drunk on the cool tile of the bathroom floor. But then she's got me for the rest of the weekend. I love Charlotte. It was a long time ago, but I loved her. The rest of the details of the fight don't really matter. You know how it goes. She says a thing, but I'm not really listening. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. It's theoretically a response to what she's saying, but really it's all about me and what I want and fuck her. And the whole time I'm talking, she's thinking about what she's going to say next. It's theoretically a response to what I said, but really it's all about her and what she wants and fuck me. And then the whole thing devolves into fuck you, no fuck you, no fuck you. That's when I start packing the suitcase. The suitcase and my clothes are in the bedroom. You get into a relationship like this, you have to know your exits. I have this awareness with her I've never had with anyone else, where she's standing and where I'm standing and where the exit is. There's one way in and out of the bedroom, the door that opens into the room, no lock. So I'm stuffing socks and underwear and any random ass shirts and pants I can find into the suitcase. The whole time she's red-faced, her mascara black trails down her cheeks, screaming at me what an asshole I am and how we should just get divorced, her cute little fist balled up and shaking at me. Permission. She didn't mean it any more than she meant to let me celebrate my friend's birthday. But I get permission, I take it, so let's get divorced, she says.
Thank you.
The thing is, she is right about one thing. I am an asshole. I learned a long time ago that when the fight starts, once the abandonment bomb gets dropped, the only way for me to get out of the house is to piss her off so badly she wants me to leave. I become the most manipulative monster. I twist her words back on her and spin her in circles until she can't think straight, until she's so pissed she's trying to punch me. Only then do I get to leave. The night's ruined, at least I'm not near her. But that's not what happened that night. That night she called my bluff. I wasn't watching my exits. I was on the far side of the room and she was near the door, so she shut it. Pushed herself up against the door, so if I wanted to open it, I had to go through her. All the fucked up things her dad did to her when she was a kid, I'm not touching her. I zipped my suitcase up and carried it to the door, close enough I could reach out and hold this woman I loved once in my arms. Apologize to her, tell her everything was going to be okay. I promised to sit down on the couch with her. An hour later, she'd feel guilty about the whole thing and tell me to go be my friend after all and mean it. Instead, I said one word. Move. She put her palms flat against the door, her back against it, the doorknob digging into the small of her back. She's so beautiful, her long dark hair and her naturally red lips. Her big brown eyes were watery and running black trails down her face. I used to think she was beautiful. Just talk to me, she said. Please just talk to me. I got this idea from my friend who was having his 30th birthday that very same day, that when your girlfriend or your wife goes batshit on you, you don't touch her. Even if she's got a knife and she's threatening to cut herself and cut you, don't touch her. Once the cops show up, it doesn't matter what came before. You're the man, so you're the abuser, not the other way around. Never the other way around. So I said, let me out. I'll call the police and tell them you have me trapped in here. Fuck you, she says. I wanted to be so punchy about it, but it's hard to really twist the knife when it takes you a good minute and a half to Google the non-emergency number for the Portland Police Department. I don't know why it was so important to me in that moment that I called the non-emergency number instead of 911. Still, I dialed. Thank you.
Kaya Mitra is an assistant professor of creative writing and literature at Pacific University and graduated in 2010 with a doctorate from the University of Houston's creative writing program, where she also earned her MFA. In 2008, Kaya spent a year in India on a Fulbright grant in creative writing. Her fiction is forthcoming in the Kenyon Review, the Southwest Review, Arts and Letters, the Slush Pile, and has appeared in the Kenyon Review, Best New American Voices, Ontario Review, Orchid Event, 14 Hills, Torpedo, and Confrontation. She has completed a novel, Underrepresentation, as well as a short story collection and a memoir. Kaya Mitra.
Hi everyone, it's so great to be here. And Dami, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm fairly new to Portland. I've been here about 8 months or so, and I love it, and this is just such a wonderful community. So it's a real privilege to read alongside all of you, because there's so much talent here. So I'm going to read from kind of a weird story. It's called The Magnificent Purr, and I'm reading about halfway through, or I'm starting halfway through. So just to give you a little bit of background, so the story is told from the perspective of an Indian American man, and his wife gets a Jesus statue on her lower back and develops this mysterious disease that kind of imitates the symptoms of hepatitis C. So she's very religious, and you know, she's going to church and hoping that Jesus will cure her. And then eventually she gives up and decides that she wants to go to a cat retreat in Austin, Texas, in which people are supposed to be healed by pretending they're cats for some reason. So I'm starting about halfway through the story, in which the narrator and his wife arrive at the Magnificent Purr compound. So the name of this place, the cat retreat, is called the Magnificent Purr. And it's not real. Some people have asked me that before. But it could be real. So the meeting room for the Magnificent Purr was crammed with people with tensed bodies and loose flowing linen clothes, just like Carolyn. Everyone was missing something: an earlobe, 3 small toes, hair. The space looked like a huge garage decorated with bright, oddly shaped rugs. Large banners crowded every corner with sayings like, "The purr equals peace," and "Claim your inner cat." The retreat leader introduced herself. Her name was Ecstasy Brown. She wore a loose vinyl dress that hung from her body like a shower curtain. It was a deceptively simple-looking outfit that she probably found in the Serene Outings section of a J. Crew catalog. She immediately began handing out hideous bodysuits made out of some synthetic fur. Carolyn got the calico hide, and I was stuck with a Russian blues coat. "Please remove all your clothes and put these on," Ecstasy said. "Everyone should wear one to experience the sensation of having fur. There are dressing rooms in the back." "Have these been dry cleaned?" I asked. Ecstasy flinched. "We ask that you don't worry too much about hygiene while you're here," she said. "Focus on your soul." "Cats," she continued, "have the capacity to transcend everyday anxieties. They're graceful creatures with an intrinsic sense of balance, and their expression of happiness, the purr, is a scientific enigma. Immerse yourself in the experience of speaking cat. Soon, your pain will evaporate, and you'll be wrapped in an aura of absolute peace." I was sweating underneath the synthetic fur, and a rash festered in my crotch. I scratched myself and felt half the room staring at me. "Don't be so damn judgmental," I wanted to shout. "No mammal, however graceful, is beyond scratching his balls." "Your cat suits might seem uncomfortable at first," Ecstasy said to the crowd as her assistant strolled around the room wearing t-shirts with logos reading, "Purr your way to God." I was quite sure she was addressing the ball scratcher of the group. "We have chosen not to indulge in air conditioning and will not provide showers for the next 7 days. Happiness is a state of mind. Once you learn to tune out external discomfort, you'll be able to endure any obstacle." Carolyn dragged me to the dressing rooms before I could protest. The catsuit was a one-piece atrocity, with hands and feet shaped like paws with tiny acrylic nails attached to imitate claws. I dropped my pants and my dick drooped in grim resignation. "You and me both, pal," I whispered. The catsuit swallowed my body. I pulled the mask, a cartoonish creation with whiskers and ears and holes for your eyes, mouth, and nostrils, over my head. Here I was, being forced to wear a furry costume, crawl on all fours, and meow. Images from Abu Ghraib that I'd seen on the news flashed through my mind. And I was paying $5,000 for this torture. I left my dressing room in a huff and waited for Carolyn to finish getting dressed. I could see through the tiny blinds on her dressing room door. She was naked, hunched over in a small chair. She'd been an avid runner before her illness, and up until a year ago, her body was enviably graced with muscle. But now her skin was stretched over her skeleton like a glove. No muscle provided a buffer between body and skin. I hadn't seen her naked in months. At that moment, reality socked me in the face. My wife was no longer just sick, she was dying. When she came out of the dressing room, I whistled, twirling her around. Up until now, I've never considered bestiality, I whispered in a thick faux Russian accent. But you, my darling, are simply too delicious. She laughed in surprise, and I grabbed her hand. Too much time had passed since we'd stood still and taken in one another. That's why I'm called a Russian blue, because until I can make love to you, this Russian will be blue, I growled. At some point, I'd lost sight of my playfulness, and I'd soured my temperament until it was as miserable as Carolyn's mysteriously declining health. The group meeting, which began around 11 that morning, consisted of Ecstasy's preaching. You will purr. She repeated it several times in a hypnotic murmur. You will purr. You will purr. Then she paused. 2 conditions. 1, if you don't believe, you will not experience a magnificent purr. And if you don't follow our rules, you will not purr. Our technique is foolproof unless you question or undermine it. She assured us that it was all about willpower. Experiments proved the cats were the happiest of all the mammals. I wondered exactly how these tests had gauged feline contentment, considering we couldn't exactly poll cats about it, but I let it go for Carolyn's sake. Then we began the meow dialogues, which had apparently healed Ecstasy's own marriage, giving her and her husband the ability to communicate complex, nuanced emotions. A meow, she said, can convey love, anger, or sorrow. Words and sentences splinter our emotions, but a meow is entirely pure, uncensored. Don't hold back. A cat psychologist supervised us as Carolyn approached me on all fours. Meow, she belted out. Meow, I said, grinning at her. Meow. This one was more confrontational. Meow. I tried to summon the appropriate amount of fervor. Meow. Don't be so passive, her meow said. Meow? Do you really expect me to get excited about meowing? Meow. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just try? Meow. Because this is ridiculous, and it's insulting to cats. Meow. Fuck you for not believing in miracles. She raised a paw, sprung toward me with a low growl, and scratched my nose. Meow, I hollered. I lunged forward to headbutt her. A woman too heavy for her tiny Siamese cat getup yelped and threw herself on all fours in front of Carolyn. She lifted a thick paw threateningly at me. Ecstasy stomped over to us, gripping a blue spray bottle. No, 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 I said. She scratched me. She squeezed the trigger and sprayed me in the face with a bitter blend of water and vinegar. No, she barked, spraying me again in the eyes. No. An assistant knelt by me, holding the consent form we'd signed. She pointed to the clause reading, violence, including but not limited to growling, scratching, clawing, biting, wrestling, headbutting, and or humping, will not be tolerated under any circumstances and may result in expulsion from the premises and forfeiture of the entire deposit. Day 2, and I was already being condemned for feline domestic violence. I crawled to the other side of the room, curling into a fetal position. I tried to purr as magnificently as I could. All that emerged was a thick, phlegmy sound. God, I prayed silently, this better help Carolyn. Have we lost our minds in trying to save her life? So I'll stop there. Thank you.
After our next reader, we're going to take a break. Donnie, how long It's all 6:25. 10 minutes. Very short break.
Yeah, 6:35, so it's 12 minutes.
6:35 when we start. Okay, all right. Matthew Robinson is raising 4 kids and a Great Dane in a too loud, too small house in Southeast. When he can, he sneaks off to study in the MFA program at PSU. His words have appeared at Word Riot, Blackheart Magazine, and Split Lip Magazine, and most recently in The Night and the Rain and the River. Look at me. Yeah, there we go. Show the book. Show the merchandise. A short story anthology published by Forest Avenue Press. His current project is a collection of stories that follow a group of soldiers through their deployment in Baghdad during the early years of the war. He lives and writes in Portland, Oregon. Matthew Robinson.
I'm not a tall person. Hello. Dominic, thank you. When was the last time a stranger stopped you on the sidewalk and gave you a book? Like, it feels good, right?
Yeah.
Shaking your head's like, no, well, we need to fix that. And I know a book. Davis can help you find a book to push into strangers' hands. Like, in about 2 hours would be great to start that. I'm gonna read 2 pieces of flash fiction. It's okay though, because they're both love stories. In the hills of the high desert, while lost and careless and probably a little drunk, you stumble across a vein of gold, break out your pickaxe, and go to frantic work, chipping and hacking at the space large enough to fit into. It's just big enough, except the fragments you pull out in ragged fists with bloody knuckles. Instead of throwing them out to make room for yourself, you pack your fucking pockets with them. Pant pockets, vest pockets, balled up in your cheeks like a dense plug of tobacco. With these remnants of the busted vein pushing out of your seams, you try to squeeze in. It's too tight. So you swing the pickaxe and make some more room. And the piece goes into a pocket and nothing has changed except the hole is bigger. This realization happens. This is what it means to strike gold. Always digging and pocketing and toiling. So you call out, Eureka, gold. You clap your dirty hands over your mouth, afraid that someone will hear, will come running with their own goddamn pickaxe and follow the vein further up. Dig their own too small hole and truncate the vein, cutting off the source. But your hands get there too late, and there are nuggets of gold yellow in them, and the sound gets out and follows the hillside and the canyon walls, and the wind carries it what it can until it's heard and the boom comes. When it comes, it looks like salvation. A brigade of pickaxe wielders sleeping in an organized array of tents, until you find the tenacity to fell a few trees that are in sight, put up a store and a brothel and a church. You dig and drink and fucking dig. You ride out with overflowing pockets and saddlebags to cash in because, of course, gold is worthless until it's weighed and priced. You come back and return to the work, but what you took is gone. You start a new work. It's heavy work day in, day out. The work is murder. People die doing it. When the first one falls over, after you relieve them of their load, you construct a fence atop the hill nearby, leaving one graceful tree to mark the cemetery from a distance. Over time, you bury the dead with alarming regularity, the tree looking down at the sharp markers of stone you inscribe and set and level. Then this, you lose the line of gold. Your pickaxe finds only rocky soil and sandy soil and bedrock and heartbreak. You turn around and retrace your steps, but behind, you've chipped away everything between the holes. You've carried it off and you've left it empty rut. Unceremoniously, you pack up and leave. You take your tent, your wooden church, and your now dull pickaxe and ride on. Sometimes you think you left something dropped while digging. In the quiet dark, you think about coming back to poke around and maybe find what you lost. But you would find only a tree looking down on an organized array of worn rock with unreadable epitaphs surrounded by a failing fence. Story 2. Listen, says Nate. I'm not paying for one. I'll pay for 2 for the mother-daughter combo, that's it. Her face doesn't change. Her hair and eyes are black, her skin is pulled drumhead tight across the bones of her face. We call her Skeletor. Mapes looks around the group of soldiers securing the entrance of the hotel complex. It's night and we're huddled around the gun truck and concrete barriers. Take it or leave it, he says. She crosses the street to confer with the other prostitutes. What are you doing, Lumzak says. Passing the time, Mapes says.
Under the streetlight, Napes' skin shines smooth like baby skin. Today is his 19th birthday. And what happens if she says yes, Burnside says. Look at them, Napes says. They're all my age. There's no way she'll find a combo. The women are dressed in jeans and half shirts like what were popular in the States 10 years ago. I can't stop staring at their midsection. Skeletor comes over. You are in luck, she says. I have just what you want. Pretty lady, pretty girl, you like. Even in the dull light, I can see Napes swallow. A small woman in a blue dress comes out of the alley. Her hair is covered, but her face isn't. She passes the group of girls somberly. The girl is quiet a little. I think it's out of respect. I'm sitting on the base of a cement wall segment in the shadows. She walks from soldier to soldier, looking them in the eye, silently. She looks at me, down at me. She's beautiful in this dark. She turns to Skeletor and says, yes, this one. Shit's about to get weird. The men around me giggle as Skeletor rushes this woman over to Napes, pulling her by her arm. Skeletor says, this is Napes. He very handsome man. Napes smiles big, then looks around. Skeletor speaks to the woman in Arabic, first quietly, then loud, and then screaming. The woman is quiet. To Napes, Skeletor says, I make a mistake, not this one. Her daughter gone, taken today. Napes loses his smile and swallows again. Gone where, Napes says. Just gone, Skeletor says, taken wherever women go when they go. It's okay, I have idea. She waves to the group of girls. A mousy girl comes over, staring at the ground the whole way. She's maybe 14. Skeletor says, this is my daughter. Thank you.
I didn't do this last week.
Thank you. Welcome back to the second half of First Half number 8. Edie Rylanders, work has appeared. I lost her place. Edie Rylanders' work has appeared or is forthcoming in Thick Jam, Practice Fine Literary Magazine, Black Heart Magazine, and Dogtide Quarterly. She studies word crafting at Portland State University and is a co-editor for the online literary press, The Gravity of the Thing.
Thank you, Dominique. So my first burnt tongue that I ever attended, I sat right there, and it was a little over a year ago. I think it was the second burnt tongue that you guys had done. And I'm brand new to the literary community here. I don't know anybody. I don't have my writer's card. I know nothing. And I'm sitting there with wide eyes thinking, this is amazing. And the people who love words, like the way we all love words, to see that, and I'm thinking, this is kind of the community for me. And now I'm here, and my mind is kind of blown, so bear with me with that. And that's also all you guys, all of you guys, so thank you. I have a tiny piece. It is what it is. It's called Strawberries. Yeah. We are in the kitchen. You are slicing strawberries. I'm not sure why, perhaps for a salad. Neither of us are speaking. Strawberry blood all over your fingers. It becomes unbearable to watch you cut into strawberry after strawberry. I cannot watch you obliterate one more precious thing. We are not in the kitchen, we are in the bathroom, and I am sitting and peeing, and you are standing and laughing. Your laughing makes me laugh, and then I am peeing in staccato bursts that make us laugh even harder. We are not in the bathroom, we are on the mountain, and you hold my mittened hand in the snow. We are not in the mountain, we are in the car, and your voice is buzzing in my head like a radio sourcing just beneath the channel. You need longer nights at the studio, you say. Sudden red flags unfurl between my bones. The weight of cold blood pulls my tongue into my frozen gut. I am silent the whole way home. We are not in the car, we are at the gallery, and the way you look at me in my dress finds a home in my head. It does not leave. It never will. We are not at the gallery, we are in the living room and you are holding your phone. We are watching a movie and laughing in the right spots, but you never once set down your phone. The red flags are in tatters by now. We are not in the living room, I'm outside and smoking. I'm not outside, we are in the bedroom, and I'm telling you harder, 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 please, but what I am saying is that I would rather you wreck me physically than in any other way. What I mean is that you cannot break something that is already broken. So try. We are not in the bedroom, I'm in the living room holding my phone, and you are not here. You are not here, you are at the studio. You are not at the studio. You are at her house. You are in her bed. You are on her neck. You are in her skin. You are in her hair. You are in her cunt. She is in your mouth. You are in my blood. You are in my head. My blood is in my brain. My fist is in my mouth. You are in my veins. You are in my heart. My blood is in my mouth. You are in my heart. You are in my heart. You are in my heart. You are not in my heart. You are standing in the doorway of our bedroom, and I am in the bed. I turn my back to you. I do not turn my back to you. We are only in the kitchen, and you are slicing strawberries. Thank you.
Well, I haven't even introduced you yet, so just back off, all right?
I'm so sorry.
All right. Okay. And I just want to mention that the book that so many of the people in here are in, it's just been published, Forest Avenue Press. And since the publisher is not here today, and since the editrix is not here today, I want to mention that I submitted a piece to the book and was not accepted.
Stephen, you're not the only one I know.
Excellent. Well, it's the only piece I've ever submitted, so I don't know why I couldn't get, anyway. So I've written a separate piece. It's flash fiction. Very brief to show you my skill, since I didn't get in the book. It's, I don't know, I'd call it, travel writing, geographical fantasy, something, I'm not sure. There was a young lady from Tiflis who was cured of that old Georgian syphilis. But don't get out your map, for she'd also the clap, that affectionate lady from Tiflis. Donnie J. Shoemaker started writing in Dangerous Writers in 2010 and is currently attending Pacific University's MFA in Writing program. Donnie is the founder of this shindig called Burnt Tongue and has been published in a few places, most recently at nailedmagazine.com and the new anthology out from Forest Avenue Press, The Night and the Rain and the River. Donnie's long-term goal is to teach and make you think. Donnie Shoemaker.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming out. I apologize for those behind me. I could just turn around and start both of that and make you dizzy. I too am going to be reading from the second half of my story. You can actually catch the first half on the KBOO website. We were on the Randy Rose's show a couple weeks ago. So if you go there, you can hear it, or you can hear me read it in full on July 22nd at Broadway Books. I'll be there with Kathleen Lane and Trevor Dodge and one other person, I think. Okay, so there you have it. Tiny bit of setup. 4-year-old in the car with mom. Dad left mom for the neighbor.
Okay.
Okay. Mom was driving. Me 4 in the front, not driver's seat. My hand palms were open looking at each other, and me looking back and forth between them and Mom. Mom in her pink frost lipstick, her dyed black hair pulled back tight, her curly black miniature wig bobby pinned to the crown of her head, the wig we called a topper, strapped in with Mom's favorite scarf. The mom called it a silky. We always had to name things. I was trying to remember my hands' names. Right hand was easy. Right, I said, looking at other hand, nothing. I started over. You can always go with what you know first, and the rest will come along. Right, I said. Usually if I concentrated hard enough and asked real nice, just about anything would tell me its name once I learned it. I've learned hands' names at Sunday school, but this one wasn't about to give. Mom, I said, and held out hand whose name is right. If this one is my right, I held out the other hand. Is this one my wrong? Mom laughed and laughed and didn't stop laughing until her laugh was all run out. Then she pulled the car over next to the curb, kept the engine on. Wasn't much traffic, and we just sat there for a minute. Mom's hands on the steering wheel. She reached over and wrapped her hand around the hand whose name I couldn't remember. No, silly, Mom said. This one's not wrong. Mom's voice, so TV Mom soft like I'd never heard before. That one over there, that one is your right hand. She was smiling the way she does with just one side of her face, one side of her mouth lifts up, and she's not quite finished with the sentence. I interrupted anyway. Mom, I know that one's name, I said, holding right up in front of my face. Ah, yes, Mom said, I guess you do, Miss Smarty Pants. She held onto the other hand and squeezed. This one's name is Left. Oh yeah, I said, Left. Then Mom, she turned sideways toward me in the front seat, that is driver's seat. I turned sideways to face her, her pink frost lipstick, green and gold eyeshadow sparkling beneath the outline of drawn-on eyebrows, and dark pink powder she put on her cheeks. I wanted the whole world to be colored in just like her. Mom brought right and left together in her hands. Right, the hand you color with, Mom said, and left, the one that helps write, just like you help me. Mom pulled left and right up to her face, one on either side, and held them there, closed her eyes. Left, I said, again, like that left? Mom's eyes opened, and her underneath eyelids filled up with tears. Tears right about ready to pour over the edge. I wondered if I could make my eyes cry but not spill. Better to wonder about one single thing than to worry about what's coming next. Mom's eyes got so big and so dark, they sucked in all the light, they sucked in all the sound and most of the light, then looked over my head and out into nowhere. I breathed slow, stayed still as I could, terrified that the dark in her eyes might take me in and swallow me up whole, and we'd both be gone forever. But I had to pee. I brought my knees up and squeezed them together. Mom closed her eyes and looked down. Everything in her spilled all over my hands. So much heat and so much black. I tried to take my hands back, but she used palms of left and right to wipe off the trace. My shoulders started to burn being pulled like that. I let myself go limp and swallowed me back into myself as much as I could. Mom dabbed her eyelashes with the backs of my hands. No Kleenex, no napkin, no toilet paper. Uncle, I said. Mom let go of my hands, but they didn't feel like mine anymore. She looked straight ahead the whole way home. Left, They said, right. Thank you. The next person reading is someone I met up in Port Townsend. The workshop with Lydia Yuknovich and Dorothy Allison, and it was spectacular. It was not just a workshop, it was a weekend-long workshop. It wasn't just a workshop. It was like it's a movement, you know. Getting your words out there. There's just so much power in it, and this person's words just bowled me over right from the very beginning. And I think because it was sort of a last-minute deal, I was able to actually trick her into coming down here. But she drove all the way to Port Townsend to come read for us tonight. And I'll read it right now. Holly Stone Cave has been writing her entire life. Work began in second grade with a tribute to Sammy the Sowbug, the kind you roll up into a ball. She attended the Rudolph Schaefer School of Design in San Francisco, enjoying an esoteric education that prepared her for nothing practical in the working world, but inspired her to live in a world of color. She relocated to the Great Pacific Northwest 25 years ago and now lives in a recycled cabin in the beautiful woods where she is visited daily by a fat owl. Mother, sister, daughter, singer, writer, and ordained minister. She currently has a zombie neck as a result of surgery following a recent spinal cord injury. She most recently studied with Lydia Yuknovich, whom she considers, along with Joseph Campbell, a guru. Lydia inspired her to tell the story she will share tonight. Holly Stone Cave.
Thank you, Holly. Douglas Spangler has written poetry since sometime in the 60s, and after a life overseas and in many parts of this country, has lived in Portland since 1978. Here he has hosted open mics, a radio show on KBOO, organized events, and helped edit or otherwise put together several literary magazines. He is the author of 8 chapbooks and 1 online book, has edited a literary homage for local Sappho translator Mary Barnard, and himself published translations of several poets in German. His full-length book, A White Concrete Day, Poems, 1978-1913, is recently out from GODQ Reprobate Books. Douglas Spangler.
Thank you, Judy, Stephen, Tommy, RV and Moira, who are responsible for Gobshite Quarterly, which is available along with this book in the back. I'm a poet, but we kind of write stories too, some of us. I'm going to try and get through 2 of these. One's sort of a ballad, talking blues, and the other one is a full bookmark from it. The other one is a sort of mutated rondo. The first one is called Big Fire. My focal length was shot. Of all the flea bags to shack up in, they had to choose the Hotel Fenland in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, where the traveling salesmen are always welcome. Honest to God, that was really our slogan, printed up on the matchbooks and all. And of all the times to do it, they had to pick my first weekend working here the 11 to 7 vampire shift at the night desk. In a warmer season, I might have known better, but one of those cold-ass winters like 76 can turn your brain to mush. It must have taken him 5 minutes to find a pen and check-in card to lurch his name out on. God damn you, Ed Patterson, what sty did you wallow in from? God damn all 6'2" of your hide. God damn the nurse you rode in on. It's not all that easy to be a night clerk, you know. What do you do at 2 a.m. when a couple pissed drunk and creaming their shorts in anticipation of upstairs, however, barely able to stand there, want to stay in the hotel you work at? Well, if it's winter, and the resort's closed after Labor Day, hunting season's over, and it's a good month too early for the snowmobilers, and the lady lifts a thick wad of green money at you, you hesitate a moment, then grumble some before you hand them the room key. Well, that's exactly what I did. I ferried them up in our quaint and cranky cage elevator and poured them into 328 on the far wing by the fire escape, above where the railroad crews slept. A cute little room with a view of a wall. I unlocked their trysting bower, lamp, sink, and bed that bovine Rosie the maid had somehow remembered to make. I left them to their own devices. I ambled downstairs, parked my feet on the desk and my butt in the chair, and went back to reading The Duchess of Malfi. It wasn't all that surprising an hour or so later when Ed half crawled, half rolled downstairs and out the front door. Gobbling a spoor of obscenities, he staggered off until the night and the wine-dark sea of Wisconsin winter swallowed his burgundy leisure suit. She followed him by about 30 paces. When I saw that pissed-off look on her face, I snickered behind my book. She glared lizards and black pigs at me, then wound up and flung the room key whizzing past my ear. Good night, I sneered. Fuck you, she said. Later on, as I was about to mop the lobby, old Mrs. Schneider, who had the ears of a rat terrier and could hear the water tap running in the next wing, poked her prune face down the staircase and in querulous Viennese tones announced, I smell smoke up there. I said I'd go have a look. Ida Schneider's tongue was a chainsaw with an Austrian accent. She'd mince me into dog food if I didn't look. What she smells is the Ellises, I thought. Rhinelander's congenital defectives down the hall with a hot plate burning A&P pork and beans. I stumped 3 flights up the moth-eaten stairs, following Ida's indignant rump twitches. We turned into the far wing and smoke. Holy smoke was there smoke. Black as smudge pots, head level, boiling along the ceiling as far as the fire escape. With a squawk of dismay, Ida darted into her bric-a-brac department. I totally lost it and hauled ass downstairs for the pass key, snagged it, yanked the old crate back upstairs, and unlocked the room nearest the fire escape. Inside, I found that bed ablaze like a good pot-bellied stove. I wish I'd had time to savor the thrill of taking that little clapper and bashing in the glass on the fire alarm box, but I was too busy being panic-stricken and ran off down the corridor with all the aplomb of a chicken with its head cut off. I met the boss coming the other way with a fire extinguisher in either hand. There's a fire at 328. I wheezed belatedly as he jammed one of them into my solar plexus. Archie Ellis, drunk as a coot, gawked in his drawers, then haymakered oily smoke, hollering, Fire! We're on fire! Lord knows we tried. The boss and I came away from 328 with frizzled eyebrows and minstrel faces, but that fire kept right on going. Those extinguishers may put out a burning trash can, but they aren't much help with a mattress fire, especially when some joker squirted half the foam out. I was downstairs calling the firemen when I suddenly remembered Ida. Oh shit, I thought, taking the fire stairs 3 at a time back up to the 3rd floor. If that old biddy dies of inhalation or gets broiled alive in a rat hole, I'll never forgive myself. Well, I got maybe 4 steps down the hall when each cough whooped black billows into me, and little Christmas lights flashed off and on in my head. I fell down on my hands and knees and crawled back out, then lay my cheek on the landing and puked my guts out on cold stairs. Later, of course, it turned out that Ida had barricaded herself in with her girlhood mementos and her chintzy porcelain figurines, then locked all the doors and transoms. After the firemen had swamped the last embers across the hall, Ida came out swearing with nary a blister. Well, I wound up the dubious hero after all the shouting was over. At least I got my name misspelled in the Daily News. Of course, that whole wing of the hotel was a total loss, but I'm in the land of the living and able to relate this story to you. My friends, let me tell you here and now, I've seen that hot bed of lust with my own eyes. I've seen beds someone was too drunk to pick their burning cigarette butt from. Don't check drunks into your hotel. They're just looking for a box of matches to set the world on fire. Okay, now if I can find the second one, as I promised, is a mutated rondo. And it spans the globe and history and all that. And it's called Spark in the Stalk. It was the grasses blowing on the hillside with strong stalks and heavy heads. It was the weeds growing among them with tendrils and pods. It was the spark in the fennel stalk. It was the grasses. It was the animals, distemper in the swine and fowl. It was the cattle and mushrooms growing in their dung, and dancing and singing and dreaming and drumming on goatskin. It was the sour grapes. It was the sweet wine. It was the animals. It was the melting snow and the glaciers retreating and the grasses returning. It was the fast horses and the turning wheel that was a quartered sun. It was the velocity. It was the flight of arrows and drumming hoofbeats. It was the melting snow. It was the fever, the chills and sweats by firelight. It was a child wrapped in furs. It was its mother's milk. It was prayers and idols and voices in shadow and formulas scratched on bark and clay and the seeking and the loss. It was the fever. It was the wind. It was the cities and the roads and temples. It was the taxes and the priests and kings. It was water for the animals and sewers under the streets and water in channels. It was tall ships. It was the wind. It was the earth. It was the coal and iron and more wheels rolling by night and by day. It was in the books and it was in the columns. It was the mills and the smoke. It was the rails. It was the earth. It was the spark in the fennel stalk.
Sean Davis is an artist and a writer. His paintings hang at the 6 Days Gallery in the Alberta Arts District, and he is the author of The Wax Bullet War, a book about his experiences while fighting in the Iraq War and the difficult transition back to a civilian life. Sean Davis.
Thanks. What a beautiful celebration of words. I'm really honored to be a part of it. Thank you. So I was a soldier for a while, and I wrote a book about it, and I've been traveling around the country for like the last month and a half, 2 months. And so far I've only really read about my Iraq experiences. And so today, I'm just going to read about where my experiences during Katrina, and helping out Katrina in New Orleans. So, spoiler alerts at the end of the book, if you guys haven't read it yet. This chapter is called Flying Sharks and Zombie Squirrels. It was close to 100 degrees and about 2 in the afternoon. My squad and I stood over an overpass above Highway 20, surrounded a 5-foot-long shark carcass. The humidity kept me in a continual coat of sweat, and the only relief was from the occasional light breeze. But even that always brought the smell of decaying animals. I breathed shallowly through my mouth. A person wasn't meant to get used to those types of smells. The angry flies scattered from the shark's eyes whenever any of us moved. It must have been a thing of beauty, moving through the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico, nature's killing machine. But at my feet, it was just a giant decomposing carcass. Holy shit, this thing probably flew 20 miles in a hurricane, Watkins said. This is a fucking tiger shark, Schaefer said. The skin was dry and wrinkled and the mouth hung to the side, showing teeth black at the base but white at the tips. It's a bull shark, there's no doubt about it, Watkins said. No way, Corporal, look at those fucking stripes, Schaefer said, pointing out what he believed to be stripes across his back. Bulldog 6, this is Ghost 6, what's your status? The battalion RTO called over the radio. I had called in a body when we saw the thing from a distance, and they wanted an update on the situation. Those are scratches, Watkins said. It flew inside of our hurricane, and all times the ship ran into it. And I squinted to see if they were scratches or stripes without caring one way or the other. And the radio called again. Bulldog 6, this is Ghost 6. Do you have a Delta Bravo? Over. And a Delta Bravo is what the Army's phonetic alphabet is DB, which stood for dead body. And I decided they were scratches, and I wondered, why didn't they just say dead body? They said it was full of them. It wasn't a secret. Sarge, what do you think? Watkins asked me. And I took off my helmet and I ran my hand through my soaked hair. I don't give a shit what kind of shark it is. Let's see what's inside, Dirty Bert said. And he pulled out his knife and he knelt down next to it. And he stabbed it under the mouth and he cut it right down to its asshole. And water and stomach contents spilled out like someone had popped a waterbed mattress. And we all jumped back several feet so all the shit would get on our boots. And the stomach contents were mostly fish. But something else popped out. At first I thought it was coral, but after I kicked it a bit, I realized it was a deer antler. Bulldog 6, this is Ghost 6, we need a sit rep, over. And the radio called that again, and the sit rep is short for situation report. Sergeant, are you going to answer them? Watkins asked me. And I heard him, but I kept staring at the shark, thinking everything moves towards its end. I wonder where the other antler is, Dirty Bert laughed. Sergeant, the battalion really wants to get a hold of us, Watkins repeated. And I unclipped the hand mic from my web gear and I answered. Roger, Ghost 6, we have a single Delta Bravo, and I gave him the 8-digit break coordinate. Bulldog 6, we need a description of the body, over. Sure, it's approximately 5'3", 120 pounds, blue in color, and what appears to be scratches on its back, I said. I told you, this is a fucking bull shark, Watkins said. Roger, Bulldog 6, Charlie Mike, out. 2 hours later, I stood in the sun on what would have been a very unremarkable street corner, while the rest of the squad took a break in the shade of a house on the other side. I stared at a black man in his 50s hanging upside down from a telephone pole. He was the first person we found this way, but it wasn't an uncommon sight throughout the city. In one of the briefings, the captain had told us about the upside-down dead people. The initial responders buzzed around on their motorboats trying to find live people. And at first, whenever they found a dead one, they recovered the body. But soon, there were so many dead bodies to recover that they just had to tie the bodies to the telephone poles, sometimes using the corpse's belt or their shoestrings. And they called the great coroners in for the body retrieval team. And the body retrieval team was so overworked that they couldn't get to all the grip coordinates before the water went down. These scenes didn't seem to affect the boys at all, but I stared at this man. Before I was blown up, I probably wouldn't have cared either. But now I did, and no one could ever guess that it would end up this way. Was that it? I know. Behind me, the boys argued. Corporal Craig walked and yelled at one of the men in his team, "There's no such things as zombie squirrels." And I walked over to the shade and I pulled out a cigarette. "Look, right there, that fucking squirrel chewed through his own fucking cheek," Private Schaefer pointed. And sure enough, there was a squirrel with a big hole in his right cheek, standing on his hind legs, staring at us without fear. "You don't know what's in this fucking water," Private Schaefer said. "There's a lot of dead shit in the water." I looked back at the man hanging from the telephone pole. His skin wasn't brown anymore. It had turned to a color of ash and didn't reflect the sun. And the bloat stretched his clothes, and all his weight rested on the side of his head and his spine shaped like a C. "You watch too much television. They've been in the trees this whole time. They're not undead. They're just fucking starving. Watch." And Walken pulled out a power bar from the right cargo pocket. He pulled it open and he threw some to the squirrel. And the squirrel jumped to catch it in the air and it bounced off of it and it rolled away down the street. And then another squirrel pounced on it and the two squirrels fought. See? I never saw two squirrels fight like that. They're fucking zombies," Schaefer said. And I took off my helmet and ran my hand through my sweat-drenched hair and arched my back. My equipment felt twice as heavy as it did the day before. And I called battalion command over the radio and I told them about the body. And there was 2 minutes of radio silence and they told me to Charlie Mike. That means continue mission. Franklin Avenue was our western limit, and we cleared all the houses on the way to Peoples Avenue, our eastern limit. In this way, we zigzagged south through the middle-class neighborhoods. These houses were nicer than the others. They had yards, extra rooms, handsome siding, and thick doors, and many of the windows had been boarded up by owners before the evacuation. And twilight came, but I decided that we would clear one more street before heading back to the seminary. That was our base. And we turned to knock. My turn to knock came up, and it took 3 good kicks to break the deadbolt. And the smell of death hit me hard before the door had even swung all the way open. I clicked on the flashlight mounted to the barrel of my rifle, and the narrow beam cut through the dark into the living room, and I saw a body, naked, except for boxer shorts, on the mattress of a pull-out couch. "We got someone," I said. And I covered my nose with my left sleeve, and I stepped into the room, and the squad flowed in behind me, and the beams of 4 flashlights moved over the scene. And a man lay on a bare, striped mattress, a revolver in his right hand, rested on a blood-crusted pillow, with the left half of his head missing. And on the right thigh was a single piece of paper from a lined notebook. I stepped a few feet closer and inspected the paper. It had his name, his social security number, and his birthday written in a shaky hand, and had new plastic wrapped around his leg to waterproof it and fix it there. And one of the privates cussed, ran outside and emptied his guns off the porch, and a couple more of the men did the same. And I didn't move. I only breathed shallowly through my mouth to avoid the smell. But I could still taste it in my lungs, and my hand started tingling like they were asleep. And then my feet, and little sparks flew around the edge of my vision. And I turned around and told everybody to clear out. And when I called it in, the battle captain told me that since this man didn't die from the flood, this was a big deal. And he instructed us to stay until the police came. And someone pulled out a deck of cards, and the guys played a game, smoked cigarettes, and then bullshitted. We didn't get back until after 11 that night, and I was drained mentally and physically. And we all filed by a box of MREs, and we picked one up. And while we sat on our cots, digging our plastic spoons into our main meal pouches, I glanced from man to man, trying to see if the shit affected them, as much as it affected me. But they laughed and they joked. The men who didn't puke at the suicide house made fun of the men who did. An hour later, most everyone was asleep, and half were snoring. And I couldn't sleep, but I wasn't awake. I was somewhere in between, dreaming up memories of all the dead people I've seen. The couple burned alive in the white car on the north gate, a chest blown out across the loose sand, bodies in Haiti dumped into the bay of Port-au-Prince, the broken man dying on my feet in his own shit and blood, and then Simon, hunched over in the truck, fully engulfed in flames. And the last memory woke me up suddenly, and I didn't want to close my eyes again. Afraid the images would be trapped in my head if I did, and at times I was afraid to even blink. And I don't know how long I stared at the ceiling, listening to the buzz of crickets before I finally fell off to sleep. And I drifted into another dream where I saw myself sitting with a suicide man at his kitchen table, and the deafening sounds of a hurricane pounded at the walls of his house, and I felt the absolute terror that I imagined he felt. And the wind screamed like a jet engine and pulled out the corners of the plywood nailed over the windows, and the candles had all blown out and would refuse to be lit again. And we sat paralyzed by fear in the dark, except for the lightning flash, making our faces deathly white and reflecting off the black floodwaters pouring in and swirling around our feet. And his revolver lay on the table in between us, and the dream ended when I reached for it. And I didn't shave or change my clothes the next morning before heading to the daily briefing. And the captain gave me a sector to clear and told us about the other rescue teams in the area. And we were the only ones still looking for dead bodies, but there were at least a dozen civilian teams that helped the animals. And they had collected most of the dogs from the projects and even found a couple rabbits and a Komodo dragon. And on my way back to the platoon, the command sergeant major called me over. He was a broad-chested career man with a ranger tab and a professional leadership style that made everyone want to do their best. Sergeant Davis, I felt him inspecting every whisker on my chin. Are you feeling all right? Yes, Sergeant Major. Good. I want to tell you you're doing a hell of a job, he said. I read the report about you saving that insulin-dependent diabetic. That's what we're here for, to save lives. And I thanked him. And he straightened his patrol cap and he said, as you may have heard, my oldest boy got his commission. And well, you know these young lieutenants, they have these big ideas. And without a good platoon sergeant to show them the ropes, well, they can make mistakes. Yes, Sergeant Major. I want you to be a platoon sergeant, to train them up. Don't take any shit from him, he said with a smile. And I tried hard not to show my surprise. Again, I thought I was fucking up and about ready to get thrown out. Thank you, Sergeant Major, I'd be honored. And we stood looking at each other for a couple seconds. Well, that's it. I know he'll be in good hands. And I knew he wanted me to say something, but I couldn't thank him. I didn't want to lie to him. There was no way I was going to return to the old unit and be a platoon sergeant. I was done. Maybe I didn't know it till right then, but the infantryman inside me was gone. And I returned to my platoon, but he stopped me. Sergeant Davis, Sergeant Major, make sure you drag a razor across that face before you head out again today. Yes, Sergeant Major. That's it.
Of the evening. And first, I want to thank Crush and
Thank you, Crush.
As always. I'd like to thank Brad Rosen on sound, our author wrangler, Alvaro, our videographer, Adam Strong. Our door person, I don't know what to call her, Teresa Alonzo. Our huckster, David Smith. And partner in Spanish school. And Dr.
And Lisa and Kelly, you're here every time.
Kelly, yeah.
And Gigi.
Ariel Gore is the editor and publisher of the Alternative Press award-winning magazine Hip Mama. And the author of 8 books. Her latest, which is just out from Hawthorne Press, is The End of Eve, which chronicles her years spent caring for her dying mother. The memoir has been called Terms of Endearment meets Whatever Happened to Baby with Jade. Very good.
Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. It's been incredible. I was going to read to you from the end of Eve, kind of from the middle of the book. When my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, she didn't want me to take care of her, but she said, pitifully tiniest, you're all I have. And you know, at the time we thought she would only live a couple of months, my then partner and I and our preschool kid, and so we figured, well, we can do anything for a couple of months, right? The part I'm going to read to you is from about 2.5 years in. It's a chapter called Marked Women. Oh, darling, the voice that answered my mother's landline had a British accent. I've just rung the ambulance. Cold January morning, and I sat sipping black coffee on the porch of my little adobe. Ambulance? Yes, darling, your mom's palliative care nurse. We're just taking her to the hospital to get her pain under control. Palliative care nurse, I scooted the words around my brain. From hospice? No, darling, the voice said. Your mom got herself booted from hospice again. I pulled a blanket around my shoulders, stared at the round top mountain I could see from my porch. I was alone in the house for now. My son Maxito off with Seoul for a few days, Maya back in Los Angeles, Abra not yet home from winter break. I'd spent December house sitting for a friend in Portland. Took Maya and Maxito to the Nutcracker Ballet, Hot Wheels and Lego sets, and a tattoo gift certificate under the tree. I'd emailed back and forth with my mother a few times from Portland, told her I could help her out on Wednesdays when we got back to New Mexico. I figured I could handle Wednesdays, 1 day a week. And the first Wednesday had gone well enough. When I got there, she was screaming at some worker in the entryway, and he scurried off with his hammer, muttering, "Your mother's a witch." But my mother shook her head. That guy had ego problems. I gave her a quick hug, and she flinched when I touched her shoulder. She wore a loose black sweater, pointed to the light bulbs in the kitchen that needed changing. The kitchen, a 6-burner commercial gas stove, rustic faux finished cabinets, antique metal and mahogany counters, a deep farmhouse sink. When I stood on the stepladder, I didn't worry that she might push me. She seemed too weak for that kind of thing now. I took her shopping list to Healthy Wealthy, bought organic chanterelle mushrooms and mint citrus tea. When I got back, she asked about Maxito, said, "All right, thanks, tiniest. I'll see you next week." Now it was Wednesday again, and I held the phone to my cold ear. "Don't worry, darling," the voice said. "We'll get your mom settled in, and you can come along and meet us at the hospital later this afternoon." "I can come now," I offered. It wasn't that I felt any pressing need to rush to my mother's bedside. It was just that I had a date with a cute chef I'd been flirting with on Facebook, and I didn't want to get held up at the hospital. I mean, I'd gotten my legs waxed. That's what I was thinking. I just got my legs waxed. "No, darling," the palliative care nurse said. "You'll meet us at Christus St. Vincent Hospital later this afternoon." I thought to argue, but the voice sounded like somebody's good mother, so I said, "All right." And I hung up thinking, please, God, my mother's already ruined my life. Don't let her wreck my date. The cute chef on Facebook was a friend of a friend. She'd just buried her father, said she only wanted red chili and new tattoos. I told her I agreed that death and chili and tattoos were an excellent combination, but I didn't tell her I knew anything about dying parents. I messaged her from my cold porch now, collecting new reasons to get tattooed by the minute. I wanted stars on my hips. She didn't ask for further explanation, and I didn't offer any. She just messaged back, "Still on for 5 o'clock, I hope." I hoped so too. Inside, I took a random book from the shelf, In Quest of Candlelighters by Kenneth Patchen. I ran my hand across the black and white cover, asked, "What now?" I opened to a random page and read this: "My God, I can smell death all around me." I shook my head, wanted to shake it off. What kind of oracle was that? I wanted to try again, turned the page and read instead, right now, I insist that right now, some beautiful girl is sitting on the bank of a river with a copy of this book in her hands, and right now, she has a rose in her hair. Yes, this could be my new oracle. There would be an end to all this death someday. Fast forward, and right now, some beautiful girl is sitting on the bank of a river with a copy of this book, and right now, she has a rose in her hair. I pulled into the parking lot of the hospital on the hill at 3:30 that afternoon. The buildings were adobe brown, like all the buildings in Santa Fe. The sound of my boots on asphalt, an automatic sliding glass door, boots on tile, inside, all white walls and low ceilings, paintings of desert rocks and native women, Santa Fe paintings. The man who sat behind glass wrote my mother's room number on a card for me. Lay people with volunteer badges pinned to their chests shuffled through the hallways carrying clipboards and offering communion to some of the patients. An old man in a baseball hat gave me a brochure with the word healing above a crucifix. I thanked him, stepped into the elevator, opened the brochure. Good news, Jesus has already borne your sickness, so you don't have to. A right turn down the hall, then right again. I didn't think much of it all. I'd been to see my mother in plenty of hospital rooms back in Portland, but when I peered around the doorframe into her room, the sight of her made my breath catch. She sat propped in a chair, her eyes closed, head back and mouth open, surrounded by machines that beeped and glowed, an oxygen tube in her nose. I stepped back from the doorway to steady my breath. What had I expected anyway? The mother of my childhood, dark 70s perm, defined biceps, still strong enough to leave a mark when she hit me. I crept into the room quiet as I could, but she opened her eyes right away and smiled, tiniest. I set the healing brochure on her bedside table. You better be careful, I warned her. There's a whole lot of Jesus up in this place. She laughed, kind of shrugged, but then didn't shrug, winced at the shrugging. I got no problem with Jesus, she said. She had black radiation tattoos inked across her chest. There was the alternate beeping of the heart monitor and the morphine pump, the sound of the oxygen machine. Ariel, she said suddenly, you look gorgeous. I gestured toward her morphine pump. I bet everybody looks pretty good when you're on all those drugs. She smiled, but tears welled in her eyes. Tiniest, she sighed, you came back to me. I sat down on a cushioned pink chair in the corner of the room, scooted closer to her. I only came back because I heard you were going to be on your best behavior from now on. She wrinkled her nose. I must have been on a lot of drugs if I told anyone that. And I had to laugh. I knew my mother was impossible and worse, but some part of me had always liked her. Nurses and attendants shuffled in and out of the room, adjusted the machines, and brought white bread sandwiches and plastic cups of red Jell-O. My mother scowled at the tray. Can you imagine serving this to someone in a hospital? Give me a piece of paper. I have a shopping list for you. I kept my eye on the wall clock as she wrote her list in red ink. I have to go in a few minutes, I told her. I can bring you the food tomorrow. Go? She looked panicked, wrote faster. I have to pick up Maxito, I lied. Tears rushed down her cheeks. I need a book, tiniest. You can't leave me here without a book. Please, I need you to go to the bookstore for me. Fluorescent light and the smell of disinfectant. I can't, Mom. Her face crumpled. I'm begging you, tiniest. I'll die of boredom in this place. They'll turn on the television and it won't be Anderson Cooper. It will be some idiotic thing, some reality cops. I could feel my heart contract in my chest, but no, I was going on a date. I wasn't going to the bookstore. Maybe my date would be hot and easy, or maybe it would be strained and awkward. I didn't care. My mother was not going to be the one to ruin it for me. I'll go and see if I have anything in my car, I offered. My car was a disaster heap of Christmas cards and overdue bills and clothes and toys. Surely there would be a book in there somewhere. Tile hall, elevator, tile steps, glass door, asphalt, nothing in the back seat. I dug through the trunk, finally found a hardback some publishing company had sent me as a review copy a long time ago. Free from lies. I squinted at the subtitle, Discovering Your True Needs. Who knew what it was about? My mother was asleep when I stepped back into her room, so I left the book on her bedside table and pocketed her red ink shopping list. The chef texted directions to her house. She lived on a busy street, driveway exposed, so I parked around the corner. I didn't need anyone in this small town whispering about where they'd seen my car. I carried a basket of fresh eggs down the block and up the walkway to her door, the chef. She was cuter than her profile picture, had a shy swagger, gray hair and blue eyes. She invited me in, offered me a glass of wine. I thought her house seemed too clean, but I wrote it off to the recent death. We wore the same black engineer boots, sat on her leather couch. In my memory, I told the chef about my mother. In her memory, I did not. I'd been reading about the cognitive deficits caused by stress and grief. That the two of us could carry on a conversation is apparently impressive. The fact that neither of us would later remember what we'd said is, it turns out, perfectly normal. I remember she showed me the African violets she'd had inked on her upper arm the day after her father's funeral, just the black outlines and gray shading so far. The skin around it had just started to peel. She said she liked the physical and tangible pain of that, death and tattoos. But when we stepped into the studio on Topeka Street, maybe an hour later, all the artists were booked up. It would just be a red chilly night, enchiladas at the mall. I remember a table by the window. I remember I touched the chef's arm. I remember comparing X's to make sure we had at least 3 degrees of separation. I remember that I laughed. Next morning, I woke alone on my cowboy bedroll and my little adobe wasn't so cold. I'd agreed to meet the chef back at the tattoo shop just before noon. We arrived wearing the same brown fried harness boots, and she blushed at that, watched over a low table as a boy with a butterfly on his face etched stars into my skin. Each black outline and each gold shading hurt in just the right ways, deep and hungry. I wanted to scar myself like this with talismans. I wanted to ward off all the hard things that hadn't happened yet. I wanted to remember these cold days, remember how it felt to be cut like this, to ache and to bruise, to peel and tend the wound, to heal. Asphalt, glass doors, tile steps, elevator, tile hall. Tiniest, my mother cried from the crisp white sheets of her hospital bed. She held up the hardcover review copy of Free From Lies. Why did you have this book in your car? I will pay for the therapy. I will go to the therapy with you. If you were abused like this, I'll do anything. My face must have flushed. I looked down at my brown harness boots. I haven't read that book. I admitted it was a review copy. What is it? My God, my mother sighed. Her tattooed eyeliner looked strange now that she didn't wear any other makeup. Oh, thank God, Tiniest. This book is heaven sent. It's the single most important book ever written. It's by Alice Miller. I was abused, Tiniest. She shifted her hand weakly, pointed to her chest. Do you know that? I was abused. I'm so glad you weren't abused. I set down the grocery bag from Healthy Wealthy, didn't clarify that I only said I hadn't read the book. This is why I have cancer, my mother cried. I have lung cancer because I was abused and I didn't have enough time to get free. I sat down in the pink cushioned chair by her bed. I'm sorry. Those first days in the hospital, my mother wept easily. In the morning, I brought her organic quinoa salad and senna tea. She complimented me on my good looks, read passages aloud from the pages of Free From Lies. She liked the chapter that began with a scene from Mommy Dearest. Christina Crawford at her mother's deathbed, tears in her eyes. I've always loved you, the daughter said. You've suffered so much, but now you're free of those sufferings. I tried not to laugh, thinking about the wire hanger scene and my mother in her face mask reenacting it when I was a kid, but I knew she didn't think it was funny now. She read Alice Miller's analysis. This scene pinpoints the tragedy of abused children. Their own sufferings count for nothing. My fresh tattoos still stung, the hissing sound of my mother's oxygen machine. My suffering, my mother cried. It counted for nothing, Tiniest. She steadied herself, kept reading about the abused children. They have so completely internalized the determination of the parents and society to ignore what they have been through, that they can only feel compassion for their parents, never for the children they themselves were. This is what we all call love. My mother flinched, pressed the button on her morphine pump. Waiting for love is not love, she whispered, the book shaking in her hands now. Waiting for love is not love, even if we always call it that. One of her machines started beeping and she squinted at me. Do you understand, Ariel? I didn't say anything. Of course I understood. My heart ached for the child my mother once was, but my compassion had these bruised and angry edges, and I thought, seriously? You have the nerve to complain to me? Part of me just wanted to rip all the tubes out of her body and watch her die in slow agony. Yes, I finally said, I understand.
Thank you, everybody. And we're gonna have a picture.
Yes.
Every pages, writer, person.
Pages, writer, people who have read.
People who have read.
Pages, writer.
Everybody else.
Hey, yeah, there's lots of room here. Let's do it right
Yeah, let's do it here.
So,